we've got Jim Hayward of Applied DNA Sciences, a CSI company, also a FiReStarter company this year. Congratulations on
thank you very much.
FiReStarter nominee. It's great to have you here.
We're very pleased to be here. It's very exciting.
It is exciting, and this is the type of group, SNS, that appreciates and really values the kind of work that your company is doing, because truly is cutting edge stuff. You guys are using DNA for authentication and security, right?
Yes.
And so we want to go into that a little bit. Why DNA and security? I mean, how did this come together? I mean, how did you get excited about this? What's the vision behind Applied DNA Sciences?
Well, since you've used the word security, maybe it would help a little if I just kind of defined the areas in which we work. And so what we do is use DNA to tighten up leaky supply chains, especially. And as a consequence, we kind of view counterfeiting as a symptom of a leaky supply chain.
Okay.
So we're very much anti-counterfeiting, and we're used to prevent counterfeiting.
And there's a lot of counterfeiting going on.
Oh, so much.
Yeah, and it's very damaging to your business.
You know, the International Chamber of Commerce estimates that in 2015, this year, that the counterfeit economy will surpass $1.7 trillion.
Right.
And at that level, it really deserves the title economy. It's not...
right. Well, the global economy is pumping out about 17, 18 trillion, so that's a substantial, right over 10%?
It's 10%.
Wow.
And 10% is a valid number in another context, because there are some who estimate that our technology is relevant to about 10% of global trade. So the total addressable market is almost too large to estimate.
Right.
But in addition to tightening supply chains and preventing counterfeits, we also use engineered DNA to associate a criminal with their crime.
Wow.
And so that's the kind
DNA
of security.
forensics? Right.
Yes, very much DNA forensics, but the DNA we use is DNA we've made. And so it's not DNA that
synthetic DNA.
Well, we start with botanical DNA. So we start with a plant genome.
Oh, a plant genome.
And we slice it and dice it.
Okay.
And then we can insert a kind of a message in a bottle.
Okay.
And use DNA as content. And so one way for you to...
like an information stream.
That's it.
Yeah.
So if you think of binary code, something most people are comfortable with, even if they know nothing about it.
Right.
When they
strings of zeros and ones and different...
That's it.
Right.
They hit save on their computer, they know their Word file will be saved, they don't worry about the binary code.
And it's all zeros and ones.
Well, consider DNA. Instead of binary, single-stranded DNA is quaternary.
Right, right.
It's
got four letters, right?
And if you work with double-stranded DNA, you actually have 8 options in a single bit.
Okay.
And so compared to the density of binary code, which most people think is fairly high because of the amount of storage you have on your computer.
Sure, a terabyte of storage.
DNA can store an enormous quantity of content.
Of course.
And we can engineer that content. So if you consider somebody like George Church, who's a synthetic biologist at Harvard and MIT, he recently wrote a book, and he encrypted that book entirely into the content of the genome of a single E. coli bacterium.
Wow.
And then grew that bacterium, had 100 million copies of his book on a dish, and sent it along with the encryption key to a colleague to sequence, decode, and print the book.
In E. coli.
So if you can use DNA for that kind of content, we can also use it to record the VIN number of your vehicle, your name and address, and to mark your vehicle in a way so that should it be stolen, we can restore it to you.
Right.
Or if it's a piece of art in a major collection, we can restore the art to that collection.
Absolutely.
Or if it needs to be proved that that art is in fact the original, or if we want to track the provenance of that art as it's sold down the supply chain.
Currency?
Yes, we actually
'Cause
protect.
that's got to be a huge issue.
We
counterfeit
protect a
currency.
lot of currency.
You do?
Yes.
Already?
We do.
Yeah.
Not in the printing and engraving stage, but at a very interesting stage. So as it moves from institution to institution. So for example, in an ATM,
Right.
we have a significant market share, especially in Europe, where our DNA sits quietly in an ATM until the instant it's robbed. At that instant, all the cash, all the currency inside the ATM is DNA marked, which allows us, and that mark is exclusive to that ATM, that time and moment.
You mean the ATM gets hijacked and the DNA is released and you get an authentication and then you can recover it?
We can recover it, and if it
That's
happens to be
ingenious.
in your wallet, we can identify the particular crime and associate it
Do you
with
need
you.
special equipment to identify it?
Well, the answer is yes and no. So we have, of course, laboratories where we have forensic scientists
Sure.
who provide expert
That's the
witnessing.
CSI element.
That's the CSI side.
right.
But we've also participated in the development and marketing of devices. For example, we have one that's perfect for Customs and Border Patrol.
Right.
For example, when we mark pharmaceutical
Yeah.
products and the drug is coming back across the border, you can take a single pill
Yeah.
and verify the DNA in that pill.
Yeah.
And the time course is about 11 minutes.
Wow.
We
Very
also
quick.
have optical components to our DNA marks that allow you to practically instantly scan, and we have handheld spectrometers in effect
Right.
that let you identify, oh, that's an applied DNA mark,
Right.
and then realize that it's worth taking a forensic sample.
Sure.
So our evidence is accepted by courts around the globe.
Right.
We have 150 cases right now before the Crown prosecutor in the UK.
Okay.
Of those 150 cases, 101 in fact have gone to trial,
Okay.
and 101 criminals have been convicted. So we've won 100% of those cases.
Wow.
And that's because the DNA
It
really
doesn't lie, right?
doesn't lie. It's high fidelity, and
It
it's
is what it is.
It is.
So you've got a fail-safe process, and your customers are those that are dealing with some very severe issues.
Yes.
You're dealing with government agencies and enterprises, large corporations that are getting ripped off, billions of dollars of profits being siphoned off into exotic markets, right? And they
Right.
need to put a stop to it.
You know, for many, the notion of counterfeit product is considered something of a victimless crime. But in some areas, the morbidity and mortality is almost hard to fathom. It's been reported that in Africa last year, 700,000 people lost their lives to counterfeit drugs.
Wow.
So it's not a small problem.
Right.
And in some third world countries, the
Wow.
incidence of counterfeit drugs can be 50%.
Yeah.
It's thought that 50% of the internet industry exchanging drugs on the internet are counterfeit. It's even thought that in some traditional distribution, as in pharmacies, that perhaps up to 10% of those drugs might be counterfeit.
Wow. Wow. So where's the company today, and where's the company 6 to 12 months? I mean, it sounds like you guys are running flat out right now.
We are. We're rather busy. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
We are a public company.
Right.
We're not yet profitable.
We're
but
listed on the NASDAQ?
listed on the NASDAQ.
Okay.
We'll be profitable
Market cap
soon. Is about $130 million this
Okay,
afternoon.
so-
But I haven't checked my watch.
Right,
so
well, right.
So-
yeah, what's a few million between friends, right?
We're growing at a very fast pace. Our
Yeah.
revenues increased by 50% consecutively each of the last 3 quarters.
Okay.
If you go back 5 quarters, it's increased by 35% each quarter, quarter over quarter. So we're very close to crossing over to profitability.
Fantastic.
And we have a strong, loyal investor base and an enormous opportunity
Right.
and huge addressable market to
Yeah.
pursue.
Fantastic. Well, once again, congratulations on being a FiReStarter. We're delighted to have you, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the company. Sounds like an exciting time for the company.
I think it will be. I think this will be an exciting conference too.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thanks.